Yeah, welcome to Pop-Up Submissions, the live weekly show on YouTube where you, me, and my special guests try to find tomorrow's bestsellers and their authors. And here on the panel today, I'm delighted to introduce for the first time, she's the doyenne of children's publishing here in the UK. We're delighted to welcome to Pop-Ups for the very first time, Julia Eccleshare.
Hi.
And over in the other corner, my second guest this week is already well known to absolutely everybody. She's one of our wonderful team of narrators here on Pop-Ups. She is writing for children herself right now. It's welcome back to the multi-talented Ali Gardiner. And we review your submissions. It's only fair that you should review ours, I suppose. Let's see what the latest comment is. And please do send us comments in, good, bad, and different. We take notice of all of them. This is from Robin. This was amazing. Oh, that's good. Sounds like it's a good one. I wasn't available during the live show, but I'm super thankful to hear a little about what's going on inside the agent's mind when they see Athena's pitch. I guess that was your submission. Thank you so much. Thank you very much indeed, Robin. Let's have a look at the monthly leaderboard so far. And last week's winner, Baby Hitlers by Matt, shoots straight into the current number one position in this month's leaderboard so far, followed by Olivia's YA story exploring identity loss and forgiveness through a family's encounter with a faith healer. Very exciting. Who knows what's going to happen this show? Maybe we'll have another monthly winner. I don't know. Julia, you've had an illustrious career in children's publishing. What got you into it in the first place?
Well, luck, like happens to most people. I took a job after university on the Times Literary Supplement, very distinguished paper. I was a history student. I was meant to be advising about history books, but they had a wonderful supplements they did on children's books, and I thought that was more fun to read than the history books.
What was it about? Well, that's fair enough, I suppose. What was it though about children's publishing? Because I can remember a long time ago when children's publishing was really the Cinderella of the publishing business, and it wasn't growing up an adult.
Oh no, it really was, and I mean it was very under-regarded. But in a way, what was so great about it? And it still is. It's a tiny world. It's very perfectly formed. It's filled with very nice people. There are not nearly so many big egos as there are in adult publishing, and we had a very clear sense of purpose because we had this bonus feeling we were doing good for our readers because kind of it's good for children to read. We had a natural constituency because we had wonderful children's librarians who were keen to get the books into the kids' hands. We felt pretty bum about it, actually. I mean, we lived under the stairs, but I mean, we all know what happens to people who live under the stairs. This is in the end that you have the golden future.
They discover
or they end up in Hogwarts. And we felt that we really loved what we did. And there was a gang of very distinguished children's books editors, all female, needless to say. And another reason why they were badly paid. And it was just, we felt really positive about what we were doing. And we had terrifically good contacts with the American publishing scene. So that made it feel very good fun and international. And also we knew we were at the cutting edge. I mean, we were talking about sex for children when people were still being very prudish. It felt good, really good. And we were talking about diversity in the 1970s when other people weren't. And in fact, we got told off by the adult publishing the adult authors were saying you can't make people write stories with different characters in it, and we said yes you can, and you have to, So it was such good fun. It still is such good fun. It's a very great part of the publishing business.
It is a calling, isn't it? I have to say, on average, I'm going to offend half of my publishing contacts now. On average, children's publishers are nicer people, actually. They're just really nice, I think. Anyway, here we are. Here's our first submission of the day. It's a children's picture book, and it's from Justine. It's called Little Brown Mouse in a Hole, and a whole lot of bother. And this is Justine's blurb. I would love you to take a look at my self-illustrated picture book, she says. Doesn't sound like a blurb, sounds like a letter. I would be so excited and slightly terrified to be picked for your pop-up show. In essence, the synopsis of the tale is that little brown mouse needs help to get out of the hole he finds himself in, and finds it in an unlikely place. I hope it will start a conversation with young children about feelings of depression and anxiety. Let me tell you about our author. Our author, Justine, says, my passion has always been drawing and painting. This is my first attempt at getting something published. I've worked as a mural painter for children's bedrooms and have done a lot of charity murals in a children's hospital in Dublin, Ireland. I'm also a keen, is there any other kind, ukulele player. Pre-COVID, I worked as a tour guide to supplement my business. I specialised in food and whiskey tours. It's a tough gig. As you can imagine, I'm a bit of an Irish whiskey expert. That sounds very interesting to me, and possibly also very interesting to Kay, who is our narrator.
Little Brown Mouse in a Whole Lot of Bother by Justine Murphy, read by Kay. A little brown mouse not too far from home fell down a deep hole while out for a roam. The sides were so steep he couldn't get out. With feelings of panic and feelings of doubt, our little brown mouse called out, "Help! Help! Help!" And a smart engineer passing by heard his yelp. Sending down plans with some detailed instruction, our little brown mouse had the job of construction. But smart engineers can also be fools, for what good are plans when a mouse has no tools? Next to pass by was a kind-hearted neighbour. Would she be our brown mouse's hero and saviour? Sending down love in the form of a letter made little brown mouse feel a whole lot better. But while positive thoughts are great for the soul, they're not very helpful when stuck in a hole. Just when our mouse felt a little dejected and began to believe he was being neglected, his very good friend peered into the gloom, then took a big leap, calling out, "Make some room!" "No, no," said Brown Mouse, "now you are stuck too. This is no good. What on earth shall we do?" But his friend wasn't worried. With his head gave a shrug and wrapped up our mouse in the biggest warm hug. Our little brown mouse felt a warm fuzzy glow as his friend explained what our mouse didn't know. You see, his friend had been down this hole once before and knew the way out through a small secret door.
Oh, it's very short and sweet, and we do have our narrator in the Genius Room right now. That is Ancora, and it's always interesting to hear from the narrators because they see it from a slightly different point of view. And she says, "I like this and thought it was fun for kids." Glenn says, "I would read this to a child. It's lovely." Galadriel says, "Very sweet." Vicky, "I would happily read this to my grandchildren, think they'd love it." Vagabond, "The mice are very sweet." Jan's love it. Glenn says, "Very cute." Vagabond, "Quite big words." Eva, "Rhyme is a plus for children." And Kate says, "What a cute mouse." And Andy says, "Lovely watercolour illustrations." What did you think of that, Julia?
Well, I think it's a very, very good first attempt at a picture book. Congratulations. But I think, yes, I think rhyme is very good. Obviously, Julia Donaldson is the queen rhymer of picture books.
Yeah.
Everybody else is trying to do the same. So rhyming picture books is a very crowded market. That would be the only downside to that. I think the use of language is good. I would not have those capital letters in the random words. That's irritating.
Yeah.
And I find it quite hard to judge because I think typically if you're looking at a picture book, you have to look at it in terms of double page spreads because the way the pictures lead from one to the other is a very important part of it. So I didn't see that, which slightly means I'm not quite sure how the story would unfold.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a good story. I thought the idea of having this subliminal message about, helping people when they were down was good. I thought the mouse was a nice character. I think the title needs to be a lot snappier.
Does there always need to be a message, Julia?
Yeah.
Does there always need to be a message for children, really?
Yeah, I think there does. I think I don't think we normally get told it, if you see what I mean. I don't think anyone told us what the message of Maurice Sendak's classic Where the Wild Things Are.
Yeah.
But kind of when you read a top picture book, you certainly know there's a message.
Yes.
And I don't think Julia Donaldson told us what she was doing in the Gruffalo, but we know there's a message.
Yeah, we got
I think
it,
the
we got
slight
it.
problem
Yeah.
slight problem at the moment is people are putting the message before the medium, which is
Yes.
a classic McEwan way. You shouldn't. And actually, the most important thing with any book is its entertainment value.
Yep.
And actually,
Fantastic.
what the greatest picture book editor of all time, some wonderful man called David Lloyd, who was the picture book editor at Walker Books, said what all good picture books need is the R factor. Not the R as in R, but the R as in AH factor.
Yeah.
And so and the classic example of that is Guess How Much I Love You, and I think by Anita Duram and I know perfectly well what it's called, but his name's Sam McBratney. So I think I would look for a bit more R factor and a little bit softer on the message. But I think it's a very, very good first attempt.
Good. You said everything that needs to be said, really. I think. I don't know if Ali's got anything to add to that at all.
No, I agree. I loved it. I thought the illustrations were absolutely charming, very clear, very easy to follow, and just lovely. I like the fact that it did actually have a proper plot. There's sometimes with early attempts at picture books, it tends to be a sort of series of events rather than, problem to be solved and then going about and actually getting it solved. I thought it flowed very well, again, which is quite difficult to do with your rhyming, to get the cadence right, to get the rhymes right. So I like that very much.
Yeah.
I did wonder if it was slightly short, but again, as
it
Julia
was
said,
short. Yeah,
you need to see it on a spread perhaps to get a better idea of that. And the only other thing I thought is perhaps if he was helped to solve his own problem rather than having it solved by an outsider.
All right.
So
Interesting.
and quite how you twist that around, and there's many ways you could do it, but I think that was my only comment in there. Oh, and I like the plenty of dialogue again with a picture book and with kids. I think it's an easy way of sort of showing character, and it does break it up, stop it being lumps of text. So I like that as well.
Kate says, good point from you, Ali, just now. Vic says, short is great when you're reading the bedtime story. Andy says, totally agree about the entertainment before the message. And I happen to know that Andy is a broadcast journalist, so he knows what he's talking about too. Let's go back to Julia just for a moment. Have you managed to figure out the voting, Julia? We need votes for title, blurb, craft, and bang.
But the blurb, I wasn't sure about. Can I just say one more thing about the length?
Yeah.
Just because it is so important for anybody creating a picture book to know that picture books have to be a certain length. You can't just choose to write a certain number of words or a certain number of pages. They have to be 24 or 32. They have to be in units of 8. And you just have to do your storyboard so that you cover that amount of ground, or it isn't a picture book.
Oh, it's not a picture book. Fantastic
it's just
advice.
A fact.
Fantastic advice. That's great. Do you need any help with the voting there, Julia?
I can vote.
Fantastic. Good. Let's have a look at the numbers.
Can I press the vote button?
Please do. Absolutely. Send it in right now. Ali's given it pretty good vote for the title. I've only given it a low vote for the title. Sorry about that. Julia's just voted. Fantastic. Your very first vote on pop-up submissions, Julia. Yes. And look at that. Justine, you should feel very pleased. I think you've got a 62 so far. Votes still coming in from the Genius Room. Let's have a look at our very next submission, shall we? And the next submission is from Gillian, and it's called Marvellous Magical Mysteries of... ... I love me a nice ellipsis. I'm not sure on the title though. Tricky Time Travels. Children's fiction. This is Gillian's blurb. Monty has really landed in it this time. Landed where? Landed when? Will he escape? What will become of his brother and sisters? Join Monty in this whirlwind adventure through space and time and watch the magic explode. Let me tell you about Gillian. I'm a mum of 3. My 5-year-old is my inspiration. With ADHD qualities and processing delays, he struggles to read. Write and hold attention. Now, I haven't found any books that are able to do this. So, wrote one myself. Creating a character in a book with ADHD qualities made him a hero. My aim is that not only will the children in the age category of 3 to 8 years enjoy the books, but that any child with or without these qualities will. I've toured the UK doing short plays and spent a lot of years reading scripts. I feel it's time for me to create some of those imaginary worlds for children to immerse into. And my goodness gracious me, the multi-talented, multi-dimensional Ali is not just a guest today, she is also a narrator.
Marvellous Magical Mysteries of Tricky Time Travelling by Gillian, read by Alison. Monty Monkey opens one eye, peeking over the covers to spy. Monty yells loudly, "I'm awake! They've got fun adventures to make." They all stretch out and stop their snoring. It's an early Saturday morning. The sun is shining big and bright. It's a warm, golden yellow sight. Monty was already licking toothpaste. He loved to feel that cool, minty fresh taste. They all brush their teeth and wash their faces. Today they'll have some magical races. Manda Panda ate up her toast, but Myrtle Turtle gobbled the most. Maximus Platypus had only one slice, while Monty made a mess of his juice and ice. Monty excitedly couldn't keep still, leaping in his rocket car. What a thrill! The others warm up doing jumping jacks, then hop in to join Monty on the tracks. Monty and Manda wait in their rocket, Monty clutching the key from his pocket. Myrtle and Maximus get in their rocket jet, listening out for the "Ready, get set." Seatbelts are fastened with a click. Their engines power on with a flickety-flick. With a twist of the keys and a whoosh and a whiz, off they zapped with a crackle and fizz. Travelling through time and space they flew, but where would they land? Nobody knew. Crash, bang, wallop, they land with a thud. The rockets smashed up, the kids covered in mud. They stared at their rockets that had totally broken. They stood in silence, not a word was broken. Except for Monty, overjoyed, and he giggled. "Awesome," he laughed, as the mud on his face trickled. They certainly had travelled far from home, it would seem. They've landed in the future, where it's metallic and clean. Robots wheeled over and could see this was bad, as the kids' faces turned miserably sad. Getting to work, the robots helped and cleaned. Sparkling and shining, the kids' rockets gleamed. Then rub-a-dub-dub, they were showered in soap. The mud was gone, but their cars still broke. How will they get home? Is there any hope? "Oh no," cried Manda, "it's truly no joke." Clever Monty asked Mr. Squiggles for his super magic. "Squiggles' drawings come to life. That should do the trick. I need a toolbox, and I need it quick." Squiggles sprang to life with a fizz, pop, ping. He drew a magic toolbox that had everything in. "See, I told you," said Monty with a loud, pleased yelp. "You can count on me to be the best of help." Their cars were now fixed. They could go on their way. Waving goodbye, oh, how they wished they could stay. With a twist of the keys and a whoosh and a whiz, off they zapped with a crackle and fizz. Travelling through time and space they flew, but where they would land, nobody knew. Falling out of their rockets, skidding near a cliff, they all felt frightened, scared rigid and stiff. They had landed in the prehistoric age, when dinosaurs roamed and men lived in caves. "Quick sticks!" yelled Monty, as they heard a roar. "It's a Tyrannosaurus Rex with a deadly jaw." Monty took Maximus, Manda and Myrtle. Over and under the bushes they'd hurtle. Ducking and diving and panting with fear, they paused to see if the coast was clear. And there they saw a magnificent sight, a Triceratops and Brontosaurus taking a stroll through the night. Maximus pleaded for help after climbing a tree. The kids didn't want to join the T-Rex for tea. But the dinosaurs were just as nervous. Manda sobbed, "Now who will help us?" Then Myrtle got an idea and jumped to her feet. "I could use my magical night-night to send T-Rex to sleep." "Of course," Manda squealed. "What a great idea!" Myrtle threw the night-night, landing it on the T-Rex's ear. The magical night-night would make you sleep and dream. It even worked on big dinosaurs, it would seem. magically twinkling, glittery, galore, a puff cloud of glitter, the T-Rex soundly would snore. The two hungry dinosaurs danced, tapping their feet. Finally they were able to have something to eat. They were starving because T-Rex had always been chasing, but now they could eat as no more fear they were facing. Through all this laughter and dancing they had all missed who the dinosaurs' feet had almost squished. Monty was cross, shouting out for a break. He could have been flattened like a flattened pancake. Triceratops gave thanks and fetched their rocket's cars. They'd all escaped closely, without bruises or scars. For their quick thinking that allowed the dinosaurs to eat at last, the Brontosaurus slingshot them through the air super fast. With a twist of the keys and a whoosh and a whiz, off they zapped with a crackle and fizz. Travelling through time and space they flew, but where they would land, nobody knew.
Thank you, Ali. Some good comments on your reading. I don't know about you. I'm overdosing a bit on rhyming couplets. Let's see what the... Yeah, Ed says, whoosh and whiz. Emily says, feels much longer than 700 words. It does feel a bit long. And Cora, I've disengaged. Feels far too long. Needs strong edit. Galadriel, there is some nice rhyming, but needs a trim. Vagabond, quite well done. It doesn't hold enough for me as an adult to want to have to read it out night after night. Children's books often do feel overlong, says Vicky. In defence, Johnny says, yes, agree, Kate. Clunky at times. Hannah, feels too long. Ali, you read it. You got inside it. What did you think?
I think it was an error to write it in verse. There were several good things about it. I mean, time travel and space travel is a great subject for a children's book. Lots for an illustrator to get their teeth into. Several charming concepts. But there was many things that were wrong with it. For example, at one point we have the problem solved and then we find out what the problem was. And I think if it was written out in, they threw the night at night and then suddenly we knew what the problem was with the other dinosaurs. And I think if this had been written out in prose, or if it was written out in prose, it'd become clear that the story doesn't flow very well, that we really do need to have proper characterization. At the end of it, we still don't even know what Monty is. We don't know if he's a child or an alligator. I mean, he could be literally anything. We know he's keen, but apart from that, there's very little else we know. And certainly the cadence of the rhyming itself was off. So I think rewriting it out and perhaps keeping it as prose, not trying to put it back into poetry. Because there was so much bending of concepts and English itself to try and make it rhyme. It just didn't sit. Yeah, fair enough. Julia, anything to add?
Well, I think that was absolutely the point, that the form interfered with the story. It didn't help the story, it hindered the story. And the form was, I mean, very, very skillfully done, except that it rendered, it was a bit like listening to the Prime Minister. It rendered it pointless. Although
not as bad as that.
Well, it had the same quality of being kind of very impressive, but actually it reduced the story to a kind of gobbledygook. But I think she did have something which is quite important to me in any picture book, which is I think they have to have what I call the washing machine moment, i.e. the moment when something actually happens. So you're going along and then there's a kind of moment when, I remember reading a Noddy board book and thinking actually board books usually don't have a narrative, but this was just Noddy taking his car out, but it did have a washing machine moment where something happened, and so you wanted to get to the end. I think there was a moment in the forest when they did with the magic, with the bedside light, the light, something happened, but God knows what. So I think she understood the nature of doing that, but I don't think it quite worked within the words that were on the page.
Well, incisive analysis there. Let's look at the numbers so far for you, Gillian, at the moment. We're looking at a 41. Let's just see what the outstanding bits were. Julia's Room is likes your craft, a good solid 50 there. But we want to encourage you, Gillian, but we also want to be realistic. So I think you've got some very good advice there. I want to have a word with Julia now because we've got lots of questions coming in for you, actually, Julia. Let's ask the first one from Bev. In terms of children and their loyalty to a genre or author, are trilogies and the like more favoured than standalones?
Yes. I mean, it's very unusual for publishers to take on well, I mean, I'm not the agent here, but on the whole, publishers don't take on a one-book contract. It would definitely be more than one book, and ideally they'd like them to be in a series. I mean, at the moment, the author is the brand. So, if you can write 2 or 3 books and get yourself established, but it's much easier to get established if you stick to the same thing. I mean, that bores me as a critic. I think that's really disappointing. But I think if you want to get published and you want to find readers, that is what you are best advised to do. But
a little bit of discipline there. Focus on your genre.
But please don't make it a sequence or a series, which just means it goes on getting thinner and thinner into titles 6, 7 and 8. Not always true, but that's a big generalization. I think a trilogy works well because, again, in terms of narrative arc, you can have a sense that the middle one is something slightly different. That can be the more gentle one, whatever. I think 3 is manageable, but I don't think many authors can hold in their head a story that's going to stretch beyond that. That'd be my view. Very difficult.
Question from Hannah. Where would you say do YA readers mostly look for the next book to read? Friends' recommendations, Goodreads, school library, other?
Other, I think.
Other.
I don't know what other, but, well, they do go to things.
It's a big mystery black box.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely, I don't think the school library is where many of them go, sadly. I think friends' recommendations is definitely something they do. There's a lot of it on Twitter. I mean, authors are all over Twitter, and I think quite a lot of them have quite a young following. And then they go to things like YALC, which is the YA Literary Conference. I mean, there are places you can find YA, but they are, I mean, you're not going to find them in review papers. You're not going to find them much on the book. I mean, unfortunately, they're not much on display in the bookshops. And one of the reasons why it's hard to get published or to get an audience in YA is exactly that. How do the readers find their books?
Yeah, I know. Associated question. It's kind of relevant. Do you have any strong feelings about electronic media versus the printed word on paper?
No, I don't. I'm very, very Catholic in my taste about reading. I think how you get your story is up to you. I mean, I happen to love listening to audiobooks, and actually I find it easier to understand the story arc, not necessarily the sort of small drama, but the big arc I find much easier to pick up listening than I do reading. And I just think everybody should be allowed to access story as they want to access.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely right. Yeah, I think a lot of people have been doing that in lockdown. I think they just like books read to them, actually. Adult reader as well. Yeah. Fantastic.
I mean, there isn't a moral superiority to reading print, and we have to be very careful to not confuse the skill of reading and the weight that has within education with what real reading for pleasure is about, because once it's reading for pleasure, it doesn't matter how you do it.
Fair enough. We just want you to read something, don't we? Yes, excellent. Let's look at submission number 3. We're going to be reading that, and we'll come back and talk to Julia a little bit more. This is called Heroes Don't Wear Capes. Heroes Don't Wear Capes. It's a contemporary picture book. Well, hey, it's from Sarah. And this is Sarah's blurb. 7-year-old Billy knows it's not the cape or bulging muscles that makes a superhero super. He's certain of this fact because he is a superhero, and all he needs are his glasses, hearing aid, and a whole lot of kindness. In this story, Billy tries to convince the reader that he's a superhero, even though he doesn't fit the usual superhero stereotype, recalling occasions when he has used his supervision, super hearing, and super kindness to save the day. Let me tell you about Sarah. I'm a mum to a 12-year-old avid reader, and I'm a primary teaching assistant working within a Year 6 class, who are both my biggest cheerleaders and critics. Oh yes. Although this story is a picture book, I also write both chapter and middle grade books, and we are going to give you the best possible start we can, because we've got a reading from Bev.
Heroes Don't Wear Capes by Sarah Wynne, read by Bev. I am a superhero. No, really, I am. Okay, so I don't look like a superhero. I don't have big muscles or a cape. I can't fly or leap tall buildings either. But that doesn't matter because I do have superpowers. Like what, you ask? Well, just this morning my teacher, Mrs. Smith, lost a pile of papers. I only had it 10 minutes ago, she cried, searching everywhere. Before long the class started chatting, and some were even making paper aeroplanes. I knew I had to do something. I reached for my glasses and slid them onto my face. I don't like my glasses. They're big and ugly and orange, and I take them off if I think I can get away with it. But this was an emergency. Supervision activated. I spotted the papers straight away. "They're over there, Mrs. Smith," I shouted, pointing at the paper poking out from under her laptop. "Oh, thank goodness for your supervision," she said. Then she turned to the class. "Here is your maths homework for the weekend." A groan rippled across the class. I wasn't very popular after that. But you can't choose who you rescue when you're a superhero, can you? "What's that?" "That's not a superpower?" "Sure it is." "No? Then how about this? Last Friday, me and Sanjit were at Mandy's house. Mandy's dead lucky because she's got a gazillion pets and I haven't even got one. Anyway, we were upstairs playing video games when Mandy leapt up and dashed over to her hamster cage. The door was wide open. "Mr. Fluffy has escaped," she cried. We looked under the desk. We looked behind the bookcase. We looked everywhere. There was no sign of Mr. Fluffy. I knew I'd have to use another one of my superpowers. "I've got a plan," I told them, turning my hearing aid up to the loudest setting. "Super hearing activated." Mandy and Sanjit know I need silence for my super hearing to work, so they stood quietly and watched. I turned my head this way, I turned my head that way, and then I heard it. A scritch, scratch, scritch noise coming from Mandy's bed. "There," I whispered, pointing to the lump in her duvet. "Oh, thank goodness for your super hearing," Mandy said, grabbing Mr. Fluffy and putting him back in his cage. "There, how's that for superhero action? Still not convinced? How about this then? Last week, me and Mum were at the supermarket when a toddler started crying. He was so loud. All the other shoppers were staring, and his mum looked really embarrassed. Now, I've got a baby cousin, so I know exactly what to do. I wheeled over to him and crossed my eyes. Then I stuck out my tongue and wiggled my eyebrows. He stopped screaming, but he looked like he might start again any second. So I shoved my hand in my armpit and made squidgy noises like my big brother had shown me. The boy giggled and clapped his hands. I was almost done. For my grand finale, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the lolly I'd been saving for when I got home. "Can I give him my lolly?" I asked his mum. She smiled and nodded, so I held it out for him to take. Quick as a flash, he grabbed it, ripped off the wrapper, and shoved it straight in his mouth. My work was done. I turned my wheelchair round and went back to my mum, feeling all happy. It turned out she'd been watching the whole time. "Did you have to use one of your superpowers again?" she asked as we carried on shopping. "Yeah, the work of a superhero is never done," I replied with a shrug. Mum ruffled my hair, like she always does when I've done something good. "Well, you know what," she said. "Being kind is the most important superpower of all." Would you believe it? She put a whole family-sized pack of lollies in our basket, just for me. It's great being a superhero.
Oh, yeah. Let's see what the Genius Room saying. Lovely reading. They're reviewing Bev's reading. Oh, nice. Ancora, like the idea, says Ancora, there's some nice writing, but definitely needs rewrites and cuts. And he says, I can't picture, a pun there, this as a picture book. Vicky loves the line, turning my hearing aid up to the loudest setting. Hannah likes the super hearing aids. I know a child who calls hers magic ears. Galadriel just feels flat and rather bland. I think a rewrite would help. Johnny, it's nice. Again, pictures would be good. And Jan says, feels like I've seen the title before. Loads of memes. And Eva says, children will find something else to do during this reading. Not referring to reader, but content. And Andy likes, you can't choose who you rescue. Really nice line. What did you think, Julia?
Well, I thought the trouble with it was It was, I know, a picture book meant to be quite simple, but it was sort of too simple. It was too repetitive. I thought it was a great title, although I think it's probably been used before, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah, it might have been.
I think it was a lovely, lovely, heartwarming concept. And I think the idea of the child using their disability to turn it into superpowers, really nice. So I thought everything about that was fine. I thought the problem was that you can't have three things the same, as it were, one after the other like that, without something different happening. We just needed something different. I think
it's a bit bland, isn't it?
It was a bit samey, and so I think we got tired before the end. But I thought the feel of it was very nice. I thought he was a nice sounding character. I thought the interactions with the other children was good. I think the bit of background, you see, I would have done it beefing it up more, so that, you did one story but with a bit more beef in it. So, I wouldn't have started with the one of finding the teacher's papers, because that's inherently quite boring. But the hamster one, that's a very good story, potentially, and I would focus on that story with the boy with those powers and turn it into one thing about one story, one lot of superpowers, but with much more background.
Brilliant.
Flesh out the children.
Absolutely.
And stick with that.
There you go, Sarah. You've heard it from the expert. What did you think, Ali?
There are lots of things I loved about it. I loved the chatty tone. That I thought that drew you in quite quickly, and the fact that it was first person. I like the fact that they broke the fourth wall so very early on, because again, it draws you really quite in. And I like the humour. But certainly things like in the third situation, I quite agree. I mean, having three pretty much of the same scenario, by the third time we'd kind of got the hang of it, really, that that they had disabilities and they were being turned into superhero features. Also, I wasn't quite clear what the problem was. They have a disability, but that is not the problem. What are they trying to solve? And the only problem, it seems to be at the moment, that we're trying to convince the reader that they are a superhero when they're clearly not. And I didn't quite see, and I didn't see if it was sustainable, whether we were going to keep going with this somehow, and where we would be going. Because in fact, they seem to be surrounded by very sympathetic characters. The teacher saying, "Oh, you've got your super character," "Oh, here's your mum congratulating you on, being nice
if only the world was like that.
So I didn't quite see where our plot was, really. So, and I think solving it by handing sweets, solving it by making rude noises under his armpit for the other child, great, lovely, perfect.
Good.
But solving it by handing the child sweets, I think, was a bit off as well.
Good point. Fantastic. There you go, Sarah. You got a solid 63 there, and bags of good advice. Actually, bags of good advice. More questions for Julia right now. They're coming in thick and fast, Julia. You're very popular. One of our most popular guests. I have to try and get you back. First question. How could the entire publishing industry nearly have missed Harry Potter?
Oh, easily. It's so easy to say that with hindsight. I mean, I read that book. I could be a rich person by now. I had at least 2 proofs of it and a first edition. And I'm humbled because I was wrong. And I mean, I don't say that just because, but because I don't say that just because JK was successful, but because actually I think she's very, very talented. But I think, as somebody who reads a lot of stuff, that the opening bit of Harry Potter and Philosopher's Stone is so subdull that was really all I could think.
And that's maybe what people read. Maybe that's what they read.
Yeah, and maybe that's what people like. But the trouble is, if you're a me person, if you're a critic, you're always looking for something new and original. So I can see why people missed it. And of course, people often say to me, what is it that's made it so special? Why is it so much bigger than anything else? That is an unanswerable question. That is the magic. That's the curious thing about publishing. That's why people love doing it. It's so exciting. It's a hunch business. People have to back something that they think you can stack the things up and you can enumerate. And it's not a bean counting business. You won't get an answer. It's a hunch.
I've had lots of answers over the years from publishers to that. But
I mean, if there was an answer to that, every publisher would have published Harry Potter. Instead of which they've all published lots of lookalikes that aren't half as good. So what do you say? I think huge credit to J.K. Rowling, huge credit to Barry Cunningham for spotting her and getting her started. And then, but the real credit goes to Jo for picking up the story. If you look cold at book 1, it's got some good ideas in it, but if you look at the brilliance as the long sequence evolved.
Yeah.
Some are better than others, but if you look at her creativity, it's absolutely breathtaking.
Yeah. School librarian says, I've noticed fewer children are willing to invest their time in longer, dense text books nowadays, preferring instead shorter reads and illustrated formats. What are Julia's thoughts on this?
I agree. I feel just the same.
Good thing or bad
books. Bad. I mean, I think no. I mean, well, you know, historically, what's quite interesting, children's books weren't doing very well at the end of the 1990s and had gone down to being only about 50 or 60,000 words long. And because children didn't have very much reading stamina, along comes JK with 93,000 words, or is it 97 for Harry Potter, completely changed the face of publishing. Everybody was suddenly expected to read all of that. I had to read all of that. I can tell you it practically kills you, these huge books, huge tomes, hundreds of them pouring through the letterbox. And I think I like minimalism. I like short books. I think you can get a lot said in a short book.
Yeah. Davspill says, what kind of market is there for reimaginings of literary works for children? What about collections of related short stories?
Short stories are very difficult to sell in children's books. People don't want short stories in children's books, even though I think they are lovely. And after all, we probably all first heard stories which were essentially short stories, i.e. fairy stories or folk stories. But I would not, as an author, set down to write a collection of short stories.
And reimaginings
you can only do that when you're
literary?
Very well established.
Reimaginings
not a good
of literary?
idea.
No. Okay.
I mean, people quite like it, but I think you have to, on the whole, what they really like is an author like Jacqueline Wilson doing her version of things like Five Children in It or The Railway Children. You know, that's nice. But I think for an ordinary author, try and find your own story is better advice.
Great advice, actually. Let's look at our penultimate submission of the day. And this is from Andrew. Hello, Andrew. I think you're in the YouTube chat room, aren't you? Middle grade comedy detective. Oh, yes, there you are. You're saying hello. Nice to see you, Andrew. Harry Lowe and the Hairy Staircase. Okay, this is Andrew's blurb. 11-year-old Harry Lowe dreams of becoming a private detective, but works as a servant for the ridiculous King Geoffrey and Queen Isadora and her 32 kilometres long hair. Wow. Funny. I like that. I know my childish sense of humour is already on the go. When the Queen goes missing, Harry has the perfect opportunity to prove himself. If he doesn't find the Queen, someone far more cruel than the royals will take over the kingdom. Will Harry find the Queen, catch the villain, and save the country despite exploding cows, guard-grabbing eagles, and medieval traffic wardens? Touch of terror practice. Let me tell everybody about you, Andrew. By night, you've got Julia laughing. That's a good sign. By night, I host alternative variety nights and perform stories, poetry, and improv comedy. By day, I am a housing officer. Very serious. Creative writing is part of my BA Humanities degree at Glamorgan University. I had a 3-week fringe run of my play You've Been a Wonderful Audience at Barons Court Theatre. Rowan Atkinson told the director, Jazz Bond, it was the best thing he had done. Now, what does that mean? The best thing that Rowan had done or the director had done? It makes a difference, actually. For 2 years, I co-wrote and performed in the immersive pop-up theatre show, The Tea Time Wonder Game. Time Out said our show was like a live-action version of Jumanji. I completed the Writing for Children course at City University and the Children's Writing Workshop at City Lit. Good old City Lit. It's got so many mentions on this show, actually. So we would like to present you with the very best possible reading you can get from John.
Harry Lowe and the Hairy Staircase. Written by Andrew Syers, read by John.
Warning! This is a very hairy story. The hairiest story you will ever read. It's also very mucky and smelly. Don't say I didn't warn you. Final warning. Honestly, you might not want to read this book. Lots of really disgusting things happen in it. Okay, have it your way. Welcome to the dirty, rotten, stinking, faraway kingdom of nearby. All the other countries are glad it's far away, so they don't smell it so much. Who am I? Sure, I'll tell you. The name's Lowe, Harry Lowe. I'm 11 years old and I'm a private detective. I'm working on the most difficult case of my life. It's also the first case of my life. Wish me luck. Chapter 1. From outside the blacksmith's, I watch Ivan's apprentice hammer away at a horseshoe, while a knight, a monk, and a court jester impatiently wait with their horses.
It's a shame that Ivan the blacksmith isn't here.
Moans the knight.
We wouldn't have to wait quite so long. Yes.
Moans Brother Michael, the monk.
Ivan is a much, much quicker blacksmith.
A pantomime horse with floppy back legs trots in. But it's not a real pantomime horse. It's me, Harry Lowe, in disguise. You see, I have to carry out my investigations in secret. I've got floppy black legs because I couldn't get anyone to get in the back end of the horse. For quite a while, the knight, the monk, and the court jester stare at me. Very rude if you ask me. No, they're not wearing party costumes. That's a real knight, that's a real monk, and that's a real court jester. Really? The knight feeds his horse a carrot.
John, do you provide horseshoes for floppy horses in this establishment?
Not often. So, where is Ivan the blacksmith? That's what everyone wants to know. Last night, Ivan disappeared halfway through shoeing a horse. That was very unlike him, because he doesn't like horses having to hop. I get out my magnifying glass and search for clues. It's a shame my magnifying glass is so cracked and mucky. I found it in a rubbish tip. A rubbish tip! And it's hard to see with the horse's hair on me. No signs of a struggle and no footprints, even though the mud in the ground here is knee-deep, just like all the other cases. Hung on the wall are Ivan's overalls. They're super large. It must have taken more than one person to take him away, or possibly 5 million ants. Ants are very strong, you know. Pinned to the clothes is a ransom note. Give me the treasure chest with the treasure in it, or Ivan will be my slave forever. Signed, the Scarlet Spotted Fiend. The Scarlet Spotted Fiend can't be making much money out of his kidnappings. Ivan's family couldn't afford an empty treasure chest, let alone a full one. None of the kidnappers' other victims are rich. The stonemason, the miller, the ploughman, my pal, Inspector Bob, and the lumberjack are all like most of us here. Poor. Now what sort of fiend only kidnaps poor people?
Can I help you?
Asks the apprentice.
Take off the horse's head. You're fooling no one.
I tug and tug. Wow, taking off a horse head is harder than you think. Rolling his eyes, the apprentice tugs at the horse's head. The knight helps him. Eventually, and with a lot of effort, the horse head comes off. Catching my breath, I say, I just have a few questions, Johnny. What were you doing the night that Ivan disappeared, and why do people only have one nose? Actually, you only have to answer the first question.
Why should I answer your questions?
Why should I answer your questions?
Stop repeating everything I'm saying.
Stop repeating everything I'm saying.
Really, you're getting on my nerves.
Really, you're getting on my nerves.
I don't know why people only have one nose.
No, not that question. The other one. Mum bursts in.
Helkins, the town crier told me he saw you come in here. What are you doing? You've got a job interview in an hour's time. And why are you dressed as a horse?
Alright, so lots and lots of comments on vocal characterizations by Johnny. Yes, so it's difficult to separate the reading from the text sometimes. Johnny, who's just read it, I thought it was lots of fun. Martin can visualise the world and Cora, lots of like, and it's great fun. Of course, Johnny's voice is adding to this. And Kate says, bet you had to suck vocal zones for the rest of the day after this recording, Johnny. I bet you did too. Eva says, I think kids would enjoy this silliness. I quite enjoyed it too, but that says something about me, I think. Let's see what Ali thought.
Yeah, I loved it too. I thought the humour was great. I thought I loved again the chatty tone. Felt very drawn in right from the beginning, and like the way he started by the warning, which again I think kids would absolutely love.
I like that. I haven't seen that before. I like that a lot. Yeah, it was nicely insane, wasn't it? There's a kind of a crazy sense of humour at work there. That's kind of appeals to me, but that's probably just me. Title? Thoughts on title? It's a bit derivative.
Yeah, no, I thought it was fine, and perhaps a mistake to call it Harry something, but what with everything. But apart from that, no, I thought it was really very good, and there was some great phrases. Things like the blacksmith doesn't like horses having to hop.
Yeah, that's Nice line.
I really like that. Yeah.
Nice line.
There were quite a lot of phrases in there that I liked.
What do you think, Julia?
I really like this. I mean, I think a real sense of the audience, which was nice. I mean, I thought he really knew who he was writing it for, and that was great. And I think there would be a lot of people who liked it. I think the jokes were very good. I laughed, and I'm a hard heart when it comes to kind of funny texts. The only thing I would think is it would be very, and this is the problem with this sort of book, it's really hard to maintain that for, however many words you want a long book to be. I mean, we're talking, quite a lot of pages, and to keep it all up like that is really, really tough. And I don't know how you manage that. And I think you have to find a way of having a lot of jokes, but also some passages which are kind of relatively sane and sort of calm. Otherwise, the reader dies and you die because you just can't sustain it. But I thought such a great effort and great craftwork. I mean, really good writing, really good, funny writing. And that's very, very hard to do.
It is hard to do. It's really hard to do, actually. We get a lot of submissions that are humorous and they don't quite pull it off. So I have to say, Andrew, look, you are doing supremely well, actually. 74 is an unusual score for pop-ups, but you're making it right up there. And you've got a very good chance, I think, of winning the show. We have one more submission. Before that, I'm going to limit it to just 3 more questions to Julia, although we could keep you here all night, actually. There's so much that people want to ask you about. Do you approve of the assignment of a recommended reading age for children's and YA books? Who do you think benefits most from these recommendations?
People who don't know anything about buying books, who then feel confident to buy it because it's got an age on it. I mean, obviously, no, of course I don't like it because, I mean, what age reader are you? We all read up, we all read down.
Single digits.
All right, single digits. Parents become obsessed about children's, we all know the parents who looked in the other children's folder to see if the child was reading a better book. This sense of progression. And, I spend a lot of time hovering around in children's bookshops and it drives me mad. The parents always say, oh, no, that's too easy for you.
It was an American thing.
What is too easy, Well, it's a marketing thing. It's a very important thing for publishers to get books. People don't buy books. I mean, there is a very good reason to have it. People don't buy books if they can't be sure it'll be right for the child. And it's no good asking the person in the bookshop because they won't know. So people feel very confused and think, well, I won't buy that. I'll buy a toy that says 4+ on it. And that is a huge, huge shame. Yeah. But, are we talking about, particularly with under 10s, are we talking about, is this a book that you would enjoy being read to you, which is one age, or is it a book that you would enjoy reading to yourself, which is another age? Are you a good reader? Whatever we call it, a good reader, but somebody who, I was a terrible reader. I didn't really learn to read till I was about 8.
Really?
And so this idea that reading very young is such a sort of special thing has completely passed me by. Yeah. And I think, I think it's a pity, but I think if it gets more people to feel confident about buying books, then I reluctantly have to accept that it's a useful thing on some books. Yeah, but I would keep it to a very, very minimum.
Yeah, I agree. My concern is it actually puts people off, because you mustn't read outside of your age group or category. Of course you must. You've got to experiment.
Of course you must.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think there are new classic children's books, inverted commas, classic children's books coming through? What would be your criteria for a classic?
Blimey. Well, yes, I think there are. I think one of the things we forget about classics is that because there are now a lot of them, because there have been a lot of children's books over a long time, we think there were more, there used to be more, but actually, if you divided it up by the number of years, it probably would be only as there are now. And I think, yes, every year there are some truly exceptional books, and I think those will, if we're meaning by classic, if we're meaning books that are still being read, we're actually at an astonishing period. Every day I open a package and it's 25 years of something or 40 years of something else. Children's books, good children's books last a fantastic length of time. That's something the adult authors never really can forgive them for because their books last so long. And I think, yes, there are new classics. What are the criteria? Well, again, if there was a true answer to that, everyone would publish classics. There is, the special ingredient in a special children's book is something I could ask you all, and you would all have one that was special to you, but we wouldn't necessarily all overlap. Although when I compiled the 1001 children's books to read before you grow up, I was absolutely staggered to find the books that I thought were unique to me. I thought, this is a book that I loved as a child, it must be great. It turned out to be classics to lots of other people as well.
Oh, really?
So I think there are, having said I can't say what they are, and I don't want to say what they are because I certainly can't, but I think there are some things about books that make them classics, and we could all probably sit down and construct a list. And there are some, and it goes back to this thing about the simple top line message or the underlying message. And I think the thing that you carry away, the kernel that lives in your heart, and you find yourself going back to at a much later date, sometimes when you have your own children, sometimes just you go back to it, that's what makes a classic.
Yeah. Very good definition. You've obviously given this a lot of thought. Final question, sadly. Lots more, but this is our last one. Is there a subject or topic that you feel is important but underrepresented in children's books today?
Yes, millions. I mean, I think, all right, I'll just give you one example of something that I think is a problem, which is that if you read contemporary children's literature, which is, I think, fascinating because it's a barometer of what we think about children and childhood. It's such an important thing to look at. I mean, politicians and sociologists ought to study it more. But the very sad thing is that it is very hard for a child who doesn't live in London or the Southeast to find something that really replicates their experience. We have very few, what I would call, I hate the word regional, but we have very few writers who write from a different area. So David Almond is the obvious exception.
I was thinking David Almond, actually.
You've got it. I mean, he is it. He lives in Newcastle. He is a true deep Geordie, and he writes about Newcastle. But, I've done a lot of work with colleagues in the north of England, and, what we describe in children's books is actually a very Southern English way of life, and I think that's a huge, huge pity. And we should when we talk about diversity, we should think that as part of as being part of the diversity we need.
Yeah, absolutely. Publishers, take notes. Julia's told you. You got to do it. And we've got to look at our final submission of the day, which is the Trashland Takeover. I'll say it again. I like the title, the Trashland Takeover. It's chapter book fantasy adventure by K.E. Salisbury. This is the blurb. Take a trip to Trashland, a magical world for every toy, marble and puzzle piece that's ever been lost by its human caretaker. Pip and Sky don't know Trashland exists until they fall through a secret portal. The cool part is being in Trashland gives them surprise superpowers, but the villainous Sir Gravelot wants those powers for his own evil ends. Pip and Sky must stop him fast or risk getting trapped in Trashland. It's a fun place, but they don't want to be there forever. Let me tell you about our author. Before I got my second dream job as a school librarian, I did my first dream job, which was working for the BBC as a reporter and newsreader. The great thing about writing books is you're allowed to make up stories, unlike the BBC, where they take a dim view of that sort of thing. I've heard that. I've loved workshopping the Trashland Takeover in primary schools. From my own experience, I've learned that most children love books that are exciting, make them laugh, and not too long. The Trashland Takeover is all three, so please help me get it on the shelves. And if we can help you, it will be through a reading from Emily.
The Trashland Takeover by Kate. Read by Emily. Chapter 1. Purple Tentacle Alert. Pip reckoned the glow-in-the-dark cockroach was going to win, but the giant grasshopper might overtake with a well-timed leap, even though one of its plastic legs was bent from when Pip had trodden on it, and the ladybird with the lost antenna could go very fast if you pushed its bottom in exactly the right place. It was going to be an exciting race. On your marks! Pip lined up the toy bugs on her bedroom floor. Get set! She shoved away the piles of action figures, slick wheels, cars, and dolls' clothes, so the racers had a clear run. Okay, Tedzilla? Pip's ancient teddy was propped against her bed in an important sort of way. I'm ready, said Pip in Tedzilla's voice. Pip hung the starter whistle around Tedzilla's neck. Well, it was probably her neck. Tedzilla had been repaired so many times, Pip couldn't remember which bit was where anymore. Go! Hey! Tedzilla turned a somersault and landed on her back. Pip blinked. Tedzilla had never done gymnastics before, not without Pip's help, but this time Pip hadn't touched her. Was this what Mum meant when she said Pip's imagination ran away with her sometimes? Pip blinked again. Tedzilla was propped against the bed as if nothing had happened. OK, it was just her imagination, running away with her. And there were 3 bugs waiting to start the final race of the bug bonanza. Let's do this, Tedzilla. On your A purple tentacle shot out from under the bed and tugged Tedzilla into the darkness. What? Heart thudding, Pip lunged for a paw, but the tentacle yanked Tedzilla out of sight, and Pip was left holding the whistle. Hey! Pip snapped on a pair of swimming goggles and dived after Tedzilla and the tentacle. Youch! Something jabbed her right in the kneecap. Pego bricks? Knobbly plastic Pego bricks were the worst thing in the world to kneel on. Who left those under my bed? Pip hastily swept herself a safe path through the rustling crisp bags and abandoned sweet wrappers. Mum said it was a dreadful mess, and if Pip kept things tidy, she wouldn't lose track of so many toys. But Pip reckoned there was actually a black hole under the bed, which sucked everything inside it forever. Dozens of dolly shoes, left ones only, herds of sweetheart ponies, millions of marbles, and 5 wagons from Toby's train set had gone under the bed, and never come out again. Pip hadn't actually seen the black hole, but she was pretty certain it was there. Mind you, someone should clean this up, Pip muttered. It's a disgrace. Her fingers found a pair of tab-bottomed jumping frogs, a hole in the wall, and a cracked snow globe with a mountain cottage scene. Pip shook the globe to see if it still worked, then threw it aside. Where was Tedzilla? Wait, a hole in the wall? Had she finally found the black hole? Pip squinted inside. The hole was large enough to crawl through and full of creepy grey shadows. But there was no sign of Tedzilla, or, luckily, any purple tentacles. Tedzilla! Shouted Pip. Illa, 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 said the hole. Pip tossed the cracked snow globe into the swirling grey shadows to see what would happen. It disappeared. Next, she pressed the tabs on the jumping frog so they sprang into the grey shadows, one after the other. They also disappeared. Pip sucked the end of a long red plait, for better thinking, and made a list in her head called Extremely Important Equipment for a Creepy Tunnel Mission. It went like this. 1. Swimming goggles. 2. Mission controller. Me. 3. Second in command. Must be a brainy person. 4. Pocket torch. Check batteries. 5. Superpowers. 3 was easy. Like always, her best friend Sky would be second in command. After all, he was the brainiest person she knew. Sky lived on the other side of the wall between their next door houses, so she could fetch him in less than 2 minutes. Unless he was playing a video game. Then it might take 2 hours. But this was urgent, and Pip was bigger than Sky.
And for the final time tonight, let's have a look and see what the geniuses in the genii room are doing. And I think Ed says, yeah, Lion Witch in the Wardrobe meets Stick of the Dump. Fun! And, yeah, it keeps moving. But that's synchronicity. Somebody else was just dreaming of Stick of the Dump last night. Good sign, I think. Vagabond, lovely first line. Martin says Trashland would be a great name for a bargain store. It's probably coming already. Poundland becomes Trashland. Vicky says this is relating to a comment that Julia just made, actually, about regionality. Vicky says, so true, read different areas. I lived in Namibia for a while, and it was heartbreaking, all these children learning to read from books that were European-centric. As Galadriel said, synchronistic event, Trump of Stig. Lots of lovely writing, Suzanne Cora. Martin says, first story today with real jeopardy and tension. Were you feeling the tension, Ali?
Oh, very much so. I thought it was great. I loved it was confident, fluent writing. It was brilliant. And very strong idea of characters. So many things came out about her. You know, the fact she's bigger than Sky, that she had to make a list in her head, and, you know, as somebody said in the chat room, sucking your plat for clearer thinking. I think it's like, yes, and her getting under the bed and all this stuff, and her saying this is disgusting. Somebody should clear this. And you think, yeah. So yes, and I thought, and words like Tedzilla. I thought it was a great name for for the teddies. So I thought getting straight in with the action, and you do have this feeling of something's about to happen, something dire is about to occur. So and also a very good sense of place, with the boy living just next door, etc. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was pacey, it was fun, and I can see it being sustainable.
Like our title? Yes or no? Like it? Reasonable. Yeah. I think one or two people. Yeah, there's a bit of
a lot of people really like it. I quite like it.
Okay, press your vote button, Ali, and we'll see what Julia thought.
I like the title. I like the energy. I think the point that was made on the chat about it having jeopardy was good. I didn't like the plastic. There was a bit too much of the plastic toys and how to kind of make them work. And I'm a bit worried about this idea of this land with missing jigsaw pieces and little bits of plastic. I kind of think I could get quite bored when I got into it, but I'm not, that kind of fantasy. I mean, I'm quite good at going through the wardrobe, but I kind of worry a lot about what the land is going to be like when I get there.
Trashland,
the trouble about fantasy is, as Jan Mark, a very distinguished fantasy writer, once said, is, the problem with most people writing fantasy is they break the rules. You cannot just make something magical happen, because you need a way of getting out of a difficult corner. So that would be my worry about it. But I think it was a great idea, and it had real pace. Something happened, even though that was a short extract. I think we all probably felt that we started in one place and we ended somewhere else. That's the difficult thing to make your reader feel. So congratulations.
Jolly good. Excellent. Good words there. Let's look at the numbers. Oh, my goodness. This is close, isn't it? Andrew got a 74 last time I looked, and K.E. Salisbury is in currently with a 73. Can you believe it? It's that close, guys. It's that close. But nevertheless, we are right at the end of the show, so let's have a look at the scorecard as it stands right now. Yeah. It's a hair's breadth. Well, actually, I say 74, of course, 75. This is what happens, guys, when people in the Genius Room vote. They may take a few minutes to vote. Andrew has gone up to a 75. K.E. has got a 73. And that means, very clearly, congratulations, Andrew. Very impressive, 75. Very impressive. That's going to be really hard to beat, actually. I know everyone's going to try next week when we have 5 more fabulous submissions from fabulous writers. But 75 stand a very good chance, I'd say, for being the monthly winner. Let's see. Meanwhile, I want to say thank you so much to Julia for being here, and her words of wisdom have been really valued. Thank you so much, Julia. We hope you come on again. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, narrators. Thank you, everyone who makes pop-up submissions what it is. And we'll see you same time next Sunday.
All of the world's a stage. Welcome to the show. I glance at you, you smile at me like we're all alone.